Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we have our first board game review, and for this one I have chosen the game Dale of Merchants, the Guild of Extraordinary Traders. So this is a game that's designed and has all of its arts by Sammy Laxo. It's a game for what is suggested 10 players of 10 and up, from 2 to 4 players, and about 30 minutes ish per games. So in this game, if we take a look behind the box at the description, it says a highly adaptive, competitive card game where only the smartest and most cunning merchant can join the respectable guild. So Dale of Merchants requires tough choices, as every card can be used in multiple ways. Do you give up a chance to use a splendid action in favor of getting even more astounding cards? You will have to tear your deck apart as fast as you can build it if you dream of victory. So this is a game where you have to build your own deck card by cards and use those cards to your advantage by disrupting your opponent's deck and plans, and also to use those cards to finally claim victory. So let's take a look what's inside the box. So first of all, you have this little paper where you have a little bit of information about the game, and they also tell you that there is a Dale of Merchants 2 available already. So that's it. Then you have actually put those in the wrong order. You have the rule book right here. I am going to read the little cover because it gives us a little bit of information on the context of the game. So, it is an age of great discoveries. New and wonderful items fund their ways into the hands of the great merchants. As if there ever is a place those traders love, it is the town of Dale. There's an extraordinary guild in the Dale founded by the greatest merchants. The tricky part is getting the membership, since one must win the annual trading competition to be invited to the guild. Notable animal folk merchants from all over the world have gathered in the town to take part in the event. Everyone has only one goal in mind: to be celebrated as the winner and the newest member of the legendary guild. Alright, so the goal of the game basically is to build a little shop where you have many things to trade, and you are taking the role of an animal merchant. Alright, so we're going to take a look at the next little part of the game. You have a small game board that looks like this. This is basically the market, so you have two sides depending on what you want to play with. They don't influence the gameplay at all, it's just for your preference. Alright, so we'll put this on here for now. Then let's take a look at the cards. In the game you have around, if you take a look at the back of the box, their game has a content of 110 cards, a game board, and a custom die. So the game board is here, you have one little die like this, and you have 110 cards. These cards are split in animal folk guilds. So you have the Thieving Northern Raccoons in purple like this. You have the Lucky Ocelots in red. And the die is used for some effects with the Lucky Ocelots guild. Then you have the Snappy Scarlet Macaws in blue. You have the Hoarding Flying Squirrels in light blue or teal. You have the Adapting Veiled Chameleons in green. And finally you have the Dealing Giant Pandas in black. Then you have a bunch of junk cards. So in this game, basically, each guild has the same kind of cards. If we take, for example, the Thieving Raccoons, you have cards that are technique cards. You have cards that are these guys are only technique, but sometimes you also have passive cards like this, and you also have the junk cards that I showed you a little before. So it's the only three types of cards you have in the game. The techniques, basically, you play the card as is and you have the effect there. The passive, you do not have to play the card to have the ability, that's why it's a passive, you just reveal it and you do the action. And the junk cards are used to buy your cards in the market. So as I said earlier, this is a deck building game. The way you have to build your deck is basically you start with a number of junk cards in your deck, like this. So I'll take a few like this for now. And you have one of each little one cost character like this. And you shuffle your deck. And you start. And normally, if you're playing with two players only, which will probably be the case that will happen the most often, you play with three different guilds, so you have to choose. So that makes that every game is kind of different. So for the sake of the video, I'll discard these three, and I'll use these three guilds. So normally you would remove the one cost cards since you don't need, since you have them in your deck at the start of the game. Go. There should be another. Oh, I already put it in there. All right. So normally you would take the three decks and shuffle them up like a little bit. Then you have to place your market. Then with the cards that you have in your hand at the start of the game, you would buy cards from the market using the numbers on the top of the cards. Like for example, this here costs 2, so I could play 2 and buy this card for use later. And then my opponent could buy a card or do some other action. So you build your deck by buying cards from the market, and eventually as you buy more and more cards, your deck gets bigger and bigger and you have more and more effects that you can do. The goal of the game is to have a stack of things to sell. Like each little card from the market is an object that you can sell. So what you need to do is to build a stand of 8 stacks of items, starting with an item that costs 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. The only cards that are cost of 1 that you can play for your stack are the little guild guys like this, to the animal like that. So that is kind of like your vendor. So for a 1, I would play this. Then I would need to go on, and on my next turn I would need to buy something that costs 2, and then I could place it for my next stack. Like for example, I could take this and place it right here, and so on and so forth. So when you have more and more items, some items are costing a little more, like 5, 4. So you see how it goes. As you buy items, eventually you'll place your stand for 1 to 8. So that's the basic goal of the game. Buy items and use them to either disrupt your opponent, because each item has some passive or other effect that you can use at your benefit, but while you are using an effect, you cannot build your stand. So there's a strategic part to the game where do you want to disrupt your opponent with your move, or do you want to build your stand? Because something particular about this game, you can only do one action per turn. So in each of your turn you can either buy a card from the market, you can either build a stack for your stand, or you can also use a technique. Or the last thing that you can do, you can discard a certain number of cards from your hand so that you draw other cards, because at the end of your turn you need to have 5 cards in your hand. So if you use resources to buy a card or you build a stand, well, you need to draw up to 5 cards again. So it can be a good strategic move sometimes to discard a part of your hand to draw again what you need. Since you have only one action per turn, there's a big strategic element to the game, because you always have to make the choice: do I need to buy this good item, or do I need to go ahead and build a stack to my stand? Because if your opponent are at 4 stacks and you are only at 1, for example, well, maybe you think, should I start building my stand right away, or should I continue to disrupt my opponent as much as I can? So there's a lot of strategy involved in this game, even though it's quite simple to play. So many cards have different good effects, and you have to use them at the right time, because at some points some cards might have effects that you don't deem too important, and you might want to build your stack with it instead. A good part of the game also that is quite strategic is that all of the cards that you add to your deck, you will reuse them more than one time during the game, because every time your deck runs out of cards, you refill your hand, you shuffle back your discard pile and you refill your deck with it. So for example, let's say I have these 5 cards, so I have 4 junk and a little guy right here, so I have 5. I can pay 5 for an item in the shop. So I could say, for example, I'm going to buy this this market discovery that costs 4, so I need to pay 4 total. So I'll place my junk right here, buy that. But at the end of my turn, I need to draw 3 cards to have 5. So 1, 2, 3. So since I don't have any cards remaining in my deck, the next time I would draw a card, I would need to shuffle back my other cards and place them in my deck. So as you can see, you never run out of cards in this game, so you will reuse the same cards more than once, so it can add to the strategy. So usually the games are pretty quick. As it says on the box, they will last around 30 minutes, but I have found that 30 minutes is usually for the first games that you will play, where you learn a bit more about the game and you don't know what the cards do. But after a few games you will see it will go pretty quickly. I haven't tried the game at 3 or 4 players, so I don't know if the games last a lot longer with that. But I have found that the game is really fun, and I have had a good time playing it. I've played around 10 games of it, 1 versus 1, and every time it felt like I could use a different strategy to come to my end. Like sometimes I would try to build my stack as fast as possible, or sometimes I would try to stack up my deck and use a lot of the effects instead to try and slow down my opponent. Also, another thing I haven't mentioned, to build your stack you need either the cost directly of the card, so 1, 2, you could have a 3 cost like this, 4, but when you are at for example 5, 6 and higher, it can be a little more difficult to attain the count, because the maximum is 5, so you need more than 1 card of the same guild to build your deck. So for example, you could use a 2 and a 3 of one guild to make a 5, you could use a 4 and a 2 of the same guild to make a 6, and so on. So as you can see, you need a lot of cards from the market to build your stack. So in this way you need to prepare a lot in advance to know what cards you are going to need and buy the right things. So now I will tell you the strong parts that I found about the game. There are many strong points to it. If you haven't guessed already with all that I have said, I really enjoyed this game. First, it's easy to pick up. There are not a lot of rules, and if you have a good 20 minutes on your hands to read the rule book, you'll get easily how to play with all the little exceptions and stuff like that. So the rule book doesn't have a lot of pages. It's 15 pages, but it's really quick to read, as you can see. Also, there are many strategies in the game, as I explained. The cards are of really good quality, actually. It's not only, doesn't feel like only cardboard. I don't know if you can see, but they have quite a little bit of texture to them. Oops. It's hard to see, but it's not only like cardboard. It would be harder to tear than a regular Magic card, for example. So the cards are good quality. Like if you do this, they're not like bending. So they are good quality cards. That's something I really enjoy. So for those of you who don't want to invest in some card sleeves for it, I don't think you're going to need it. Like I've played many games, well, as I said, around 10 games, and the cards are not damaged or anything, and we've played without sleeve just like that, so that's fine. The replayability of the game is quite high. As I said earlier, when you are playing only 2 players, you play with 3 of the 6 guilds in your match. So if you want to try out a combination of other guilds when you play again, that is something that you can do. So for example, each guild have qualities of their own. So the Ocelots are a lot about random effects. So this is something that can be quite interesting. So all of the guilds have some different qualities. So the replayability of the game is quite high. Also, the game is quite cheap. It costs around $20, I believe. I don't remember exactly, but I know it didn't cost a lot of money at all. Something that I found is you have some cute artwork also on the cards. Like for example, the Animal Folk cards are really nice to look at. Take a look at this. Like the game is visually pleasing to the eye, I feel. Like you have objects, and when you have some animals, the art is quite simple, but it's effective to what the game is. Like for example, the raccoons objects are often like food like this, like rotten food. You see a little hand picking up the apple, like you're stealing a card from another player, and stuff like that. So the artwork is efficient, simple, but pleasing to the eye. The rules are easy to understand, and they are also well explained in the rule book. So just take the time and take a good 15-20 minutes to read the rule book, and you will know how to play. And then you have to go by trial and error to know what the best strategies are. Then for the weak points, there are not a lot of weak points actually. I would just say that there is not a big selection of cards. That's the main big weak point for me. Like for example, each guild has only a handful of cards. Like for example, if you check here, you know, that's a whole one guild of cards. So you will come across the same effects quite often, but still, other than that, there's no weak point to the game, I feel. And if you find yourself buying an expansion, you can mix the two together and have a different experience as well. I haven't tried the expansion yet, but I know you can mix the guilds from the expansion to the guilds from this one and have a quite different experience. And that's it. So out of 10, I would give this game a beautiful 9 out of 10. So that's it. I hope you have enjoyed this little review, and if you have any comment, suggestions, or anything, just mention it down below, and I'll see you guys soon, and have a really great day.